Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm meeting on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm in my own home in Glebe, and of course the Gadigal land was never ceded, and I want to pay respect to elders past and present of the Gadigal land. It also happens to be the land on which UTS stands, so I want to pay particular respect to elders for their traditional custodianship of knowledge on the land on which the university is built. My name's Verity Firth. I'm the Executive Director of Social Justice at UTS in Sydney. Before I was the Executive Director of Social Justice, I was the CEO of the Public Education Foundation here in New South Wales. And before that, I was the Minister for Education and Training in New South Wales. But what am I here to talk to you about? I'm here to talk to you about equity in education and how to best address educational disadvantage in relation to university access. And I'm going to be sharing my screen with you today, which I will now attempt to do. So here we go. I will make sure we're on slideshow. And hopefully this is working and you can see both me and of course the slides. So before we begin, I want to have a quick look at the equity landscape in Australia, at least in relation to access to university. What we'll be doing is looking at the data collected and analysed by the National Centre for Student Equity in Higher Education. And of course, a core mission of the NCSEHE is to use official data sources to present student data in formats to support discussion and analysis of equity issues in Australia. And they've now got this really cool interactive website. You've got the address there on your screens. And this resource that's been created by the National Centre has been done as part of a project to promote public access to data about student equity and outcomes in Australia. So it's really useful if you want to go and have a little play later. What are we going to be looking at today? Well, we're going to be seeing what's been happening to participation of key equity cohorts in Australian higher education since 2013 to 2019. And the story is not too bad, although we're not yet at a 20% participation rate, which is what we hoped for in terms of low SES participation at university. On the whole, participation has grown across at least 4 of the major equity groups. So you'll see participation has grown in relation to regional students, grown in relation to women in non-traditional areas such as STEM. It's grown in terms of low SES, the green line there, and it's grown particularly in relation to disability. The main reason for this is the demand-driven funding system, which of course has recently been stopped, but did have a significant impact on increasing participation. And of course, the Higher Education Partnerships and Participation Program, the HEP program, which helped fund university for equity interventions. Probably even more telling is the next slide, which shows us growth over those 6 years. And as you can see, students with a disability, there really has been a significant growth and a good solid growth in terms of low SES students as well. For 4 of those equity cohorts, they actually exceed the overall growth rate for the undergraduate population, which is about 12%. So that's a good result. Still struggling though on growth rates in relation to regional, remote and non-English speaking background students. What I'm most interested to talk to you about today, though, is low SES students. So this makes it look like there's almost 100%. That's not true. We're sitting on about 17% nationally. Of course, the original target was to hit 20% low SES student participation by 2020. That hasn't happened. And probably what's more concerning is it appears to have now plateaued. So we hit a high of 17% in 2017, and it's basically stuck there since, and it's now beginning to trend downwards. This has also been reflected in our student numbers at UTS, where I work, and is part of the reason why I'm wanting to introduce you to a case study today into how we are attempting to address this plateau effect. At the same time that we are being increasingly drawn into a broader debate around equity access to university, we're also being drawn into a broader debate around what 21st century post-school education should actually look like. So there's a big discussion going on at the moment, both globally, nationally, and locally. In the global context, UNESCO, of course, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, is the only UN agency that's with a mandate in higher education. And of course, it has been chosen to lead SDG 4 in terms of promoting inclusive and equitable education and lifelong opportunities for all. In their own words, universities and education systems around the world need to do more. This is what UNESCO is telling us. Quote, addressing shortfalls of equity, access, inclusion and quality in tertiary education demands that all post-secondary education options be considered to build the knowledge, competency and skills humanity needs in a changing context of learning mediated by technology and the increasing mobility of workers and learners. So there's a big global move. Nationally, of course, there have been multiple reviews in the last couple of years around what does a 21st century education system look like. We've had the Shergold Review of Senior Secondary Pathways into Work, Further Education and Training, the Australian Qualification Framework Review, the review of the Melbourne Declaration, the review of Australia's vocational education and training system. But the common theme in all of these reviews has been them collectively identifying the essential knowledge and foundation skills that young people need to navigate a very different education, training and workforce environment. All of these reviews has specifically addressed equal access and specifically talked about stopping unnecessary barriers to participation in post-school education and training. And all of them have emphasised flexible pathways and delivery that allows a shift to lifelong learning. In terms of the struggle of my own university, as I've said before, looking at all of this in the context of both improving access to higher education and improving the way that education itself delivers a more holistic and relevant experience to students, we commenced a new process because we wanted to do something about our own plateauing numbers when it came to low SES and student participation in our university. So what did we do? Well, UTS had a sort of unique problem because maybe not unique, not that unique problem, but a unique circumstance in terms of alternate pathways to university. More than other universities, UTS has always maintained a very strict ATAR cutoff. So at our university, for as long as I can remember, students had to achieve an ATAR of 69 no matter what. So you couldn't even gain access to a pathway scheme or anything like that unless you reached an ATAR of 69 in the first instance. Now, I'm not here to bash the ATAR. ATAR is obviously seen by many as an objective measure of academic ability. We can discuss that later. It's scalable, and to a certain extent it is transparent, but probably most importantly why people like the ATAR is it's easy to explain to students and parents what is required of them should they wish to come to university. But as times have become more complicated, the ATAR itself has become a more complicated measure for us to use to predict student success. Now, whilst it's true, all of the research shows us that a high ATAR has a strong correlation with academic success at university, and there's no doubt about that. If you get a 99 ATAR, you're very statistically likely to do well at university. But what recent research shows us is that the ATAR is not a reliable predictor of future academic success for students with scores below 70. So although a high ATAR mostly predicts success, a low ATAR does not predict failure. In fact, you can get a very low ATAR and still do very well at university. And part of the reason for this is that ATARs don't recognise students with a jagged profile who excel in certain areas while performing adequately in others. The ATAR puts emphasis on achieving a high average in all subjects, which limits appreciation of different kinds of excellence and different rates of progress across varied domains. And it also misses out pretty much entirely on acknowledging students' capabilities, the soft skills, the 21st century capabilities that are highly valued by employers at the moment, but also highly valued more and more by universities. The other thing that interested us in the equity group here at UTS was that, of course, higher ATARs are still very strongly correlated with high socioeconomic status. So that is something that we were very aware of. So what we wanted to do, and that's what's before you here in the slides, was to create a pathway to track a student's learning and development for this missing information, for the information that the ATAR can't track, you know, student capabilities, soft skills, where those real amazing bits of potential are. And we needed to create a process by which we could demonstrate this missing information. We want to ensure that when we're tracking students' learning, young people are supported to develop knowledge, skills, and capabilities within various domains. And in terms of the attributes we track, these are modelled from a combination of the more transdisciplinary or transferable UTS graduate attributes. And we also relied really heavily on the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority's general capabilities. So we started to tease out what is it that we wanted our students to demonstrate. We developed our own set of academy attributes, which of course were related to both ATAR and our own UTS graduate attributes. And we used the Capri matrix to talk about them. Capri was designed by Dr. Darryl Thompson here at UTS. And Capri stands for communication and collaboration, attitudes and values, practical and organisational skills, research and critical thinking, and innovation and creativity. What we wanted to do was make visible the attributes and skills that are currently not recognised in the ATAR, but highly sought after from university and employers. Importantly, what we are now doing is developing a robust and rigorous experience for students by monitoring their achievement using technology already in use across UTS and in select high schools. To do this, we're working with Professor Simon Buckingham-Shum at the UTS Connected Intelligence Centre and Dr. Darryl Thompson, who I mentioned before. We use an online tool called Review, which I'll show you later, to monitor student achievement and create a 360-degree review process where students can self-reflect, peers can give feedback, and teachers can assess student performance. The ultimate goal is to provide a common way for students to represent the full range of their capabilities. Ultimately, the goal of this program is to spot potential. Of course, our two key issues that we're seeking to address are how to increase access to university for low SES students, but we also want to crack the way to better acknowledge 21st century capabilities in the admissions process. We want to be able to spot potential and provide an incentive for schools to deliver on these foundational skills. So in our program, the U at Uni Academy, who did we target? Well, most importantly, we have previously worked with a select group of equity funded schools in southwestern Sydney. And because this is a pilot program, this is a 5-year pilot program where we're going to be offering up to 300 spots a year for 5 years for low SES students to come to UTS, we decided to continue to work with our partner schools, and we wanted to talk to them and to the Department of Education here in New South Wales around what sort of criteria we're looking for in terms of the students that enter our program. The first is that we wanted the students to be undertaking an HSC pattern of study. Now, please notice that this is not an ATAR pathway, it's an HSC pattern of study, which means there are written exams involved, even if there's vocational subjects being taken, but they do not have to be on an ATAR pathway. We're not really interested in students who are going to get a 69 ATAR or above. These students will already gain access through our normal pathways to university. We're not really interested in those students as much as we love them. Off they go, they can get into university through their ATAR. What we were interested in is students who weren't going to make it to the 69 ATAR, but yet who had potential. So we were looking for students with results of round C or D, not getting to 69, but we did want teachers to really pick the students that had potential and who they felt their academic marks weren't reflecting that potential. The students need to be from a low socioeconomic background, and the student obviously needs to commit themselves to the program, to attend the workshops and in-school academic mentoring activities. Of course, they need to be a resident of Australia. That's to do with our funding agreement with the government. And we do have other optional criteria, such as evidence potential to succeed at university, commitment and passion, 21st century schools, a real sense that they have expertise or excellence shown through extracurricular activities, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and so forth, and a growth mindset. They're excited and enthusiastic. The students, they can also be admitted to the program if their education has been negatively affected by one or more of the following educational access scheme categories, which of course are the more traditional categories of educational disadvantage. What does the program look like? Well, it's fantastic. It's a great program. It involves, well, until COVID, it involved a 2-week in-person summer school at the end of year 10 where they get a real taste of university. Then over year 11, they have 4 intense workshops where 2 of those workshops are faculty-based, where there's a deep dive into a faculty discipline. And then 2 of those workshops are transdisciplinary in focus. So either a problem that they've all got to tackle together from different disciplinary angles, and eventually, at the last workshop of the year, a hackathon with industry partners. The idea behind all of these workshops is that they're designed to demonstrate and develop those critical capabilities that we were talking about: creative thinking, critical thinking, collaboration skills, communication skills. Most importantly, though, 2 of those workshops are still a deep dive into discipline and subject content knowledge, which is, again, something that's very important. In year 12, we focus more on their external exams. Again, not ATAR necessarily, but HSC exams. We provide extensive tutoring and mentoring. And this year, because of COVID, we've also signed a partnership with Studiosity to give the students 24-hour 7-day-a-week access to HSC mentoring and additional help. What is the Capri framework, I hear you ask? Well, I could talk for hours about this and I won't, but please feel free to reach out if you want to know more. But as I said before, each workshop that you saw in that slide before is designed to develop the U at Uni program outcomes. And the U at Uni program outcomes are mapped to the Capri matrix. The Capri categories are as follows: communication and collaboration, attitudes and values, practical and organisational skills, research and critical thinking, and innovation and creativity. And each program outcome is made up of several capabilities. As individual faculties design their workshops, they can choose which of these capabilities they wish to assess in any given task. And if you want to look at the way faculties have mapped their deep dive content against this rubric, please reach out. It's really interesting. What the students then do is assess themselves. There's an online platform, the review platform, where students go in and assess themselves. But we also, of course, have teachers providing assessment and peers providing assessment. This is all about teaching students to self-reflect, but also to have feedback from teachers about how they're going, how they're progressing in their work. The good thing about it, that slide hasn't quite worked. What a pity, because that looks a lot more impressive than it does on that slide. There is a dashboard the teacher can use, and there should be a beautiful symbol over here with a pie chart, which hasn't appeared on these slides for some reason. But anyway, trust me, there's a great dashboard for teachers to use to look at their whole cohort progress. There it is. There's the pie chart. There's the students, how they're and how they're proceeding, both in individual workshops and in the capabilities that are being assessed. It also allows us as a university to compare the balance of capabilities assessed in the different disciplines. So as you can see here, you can have assessment against those general capabilities, those 21st century skills, whatever you want to call them, while still doing deep dive content development. And this gives an example of how those capabilities are assessed within those deep dive workshops. But probably the bit that we're most proud of in relation to this program, and we're in our first cohort now. The very first You at Uni Academy students are going to arrive at the beginning of 2022, 300 freshly minted students. They've been with us since year 10. And what has been really great, particularly considering COVID and the effects that are happening at the moment, particularly since almost all of our students in our partner schools are in southwestern Sydney and western Sydney, is that students themselves have been talking about the space they now have to think and breathe. In terms of the well-being of our students, the fact that they're not actually having to do this high stakes ATAR intervention with ATAR scaling has really actually allowed them to buckle down and apply themselves in a way that's a little bit more self-reflective and hopefully meaningful for them. You can see here, this is the qualitative feedback we've had from our students. It's allowed things to be easier, relieved stress about being accepted to uni. One student says, I think I was lost. I didn't really think about the future of how I was going to study at university. But being in the You at Uni Academy program showed me these pathways and things I could do to help build my future. I've learned that things aren't as scary as they seem to be and that there are extensive ways to access and achieve things. I feel that less pressure has been put on me. It's made me feel more secure. Which brings us, of course, to the concept of student assessment not needing to always be about high stakes, absolutely potentially demoralising exams. One of the things we like about this assessment model is it provides us with holistic, longitudinal representations of student achievement. It's a low-stake assessment, and we can watch that growth and assess that growth over the lifetime of the program. And it empowers students to be agents of their own learning through the self-reflection and self-assessment that they undertake. If you want to read more about our excellent program, you can go and download the International Journal of Inclusive Education, where we have a peer-reviewed piece by our student equity team here at UTS, Sonal Singh, our excellent manager of student equity, Sarah Ellis and Emlyn Dodd, who wrote this recent article. And also, of course, a shout out to Professor Simon Buckingham-Shum from the Connected Intelligence Centre here at UTS and Dr. Daryl Thompson, the inventor of the Capri matrix. If you have any questions at all, you can visit the website for more information, youatuni at uni.uts.edu.au, but also feel free to reach out to me. My email address should have been in this slide, but it's verity.firth@uts.edu.au. Thank you very much.